It's Sarah. I'm back. It's May, Mental Health Awareness Month, and today I'm going to be asking another question that I got. This is a really interesting one because I think it applies to folks like me who have anxiety, and it's also a human trait. So the question is, how about overcoming avoidance behavior, asking for a friend? I too would like to ask for a friend. Avoidance behavior is something super interesting. I spend a lot of time thinking about avoidance behavior in my work as a coach and as a consultant. So, in the executives that I work with, a lot of times they'll state a goal. It could be everything from I want better executive presence to I want to drive a strategy to I want my team to come together in a different way. And as they say that, I believe them. These are honest, kind, thoughtful, bright people. They do want that. But then when it comes down to it, they're not able to do that behavior. So as I was thinking about this question, I was thinking about that experience as well as my own personal things that I avoid. So I'm going to try to weave those together with a couple of tips if you notice yourself or someone you know being avoidant. The first thing that I really like to do is to be able to make what we call a subject-object move. So a big part of that is taking it from the head and then pulling it outside of the head. So another way that you can think about it is there are things that you're doing, just patterns of behavior that you're not thinking about. So making it a really conscious thing. So to start noticing it as it's happening, that's ideal. But after the fact to say, oh, interesting, I avoided calling my grandma. And so again, we sit with curiosity once we've noticed that avoidant behavior. Then I like to think of just play around with some different hypotheses. And I always say, give yourself a hand. So think of 5 different reasons that you think that you might be avoiding. And if you can't get to one that's a little bit cringy, you're probably not thinking hard enough. What I mean by that is it's easy to say things like, well, I'm avoiding this because I don't have time. I'm avoiding this because it's expensive. Or I'm avoiding this because, anyway, fill in whatever the reason happens to be. But I found to really correct avoidant behavior, we need to go a little bit deeper and figure out what's going on. So some of the things that I see in myself might be being committed to multiple things. We call those competing commitments. I can put a link to some of this stuff down below if you want to read more. But the idea of a competing commitment is you think about having a gas and a brake and a gas and a brake. And every time you start to make progress, you're committed to something else. So maybe there's something like, I want to rest and recharge. That's a goal that I have for myself. I'm also committed to being social and having fun with my friends. Well, as you can see, and this is a very simple example, those things sort of butt into one another. Well, I want to rest and have downtime. And if I do that, I'm letting down my friends. So all of a sudden I've got this competing commitment. No wonder I'm not making progress. So by making explicit different goals or commitments we've made, we can see that sometimes they're oppositional to one another. That doesn't mean we can't get them both. It just means we need to be a little more thoughtful and mindful about how we're doing that. Could be just getting really clear on, okay, so what does recharging look like and how often do I have to recharge? What would being social with my friends look like? How often do I need to do that? And then communicating it to yourself, making a note for yourself, however you hold yourself accountable. I think accountability is another interesting thing for avoidant behaviors. In the clients that I work with, some of them do not like any external accountability, meaning that they don't like me checking in on them between our coaching sessions. That's totally fine. That very much feels like my approach, which is if I say I'm going to do it, I'll do the thing. Other people really need that nudge and that push, and they realize that, hey, I will do this behavior if you check in with me. So I'll just make a little note on the calendar to myself on this date, I'm going to check in with this person. This is a no judgment space. This is why I really like Gretchen Rubin's book, The 4 Tendencies, which talks about a little bit about motivation and what causes us to do and respond to different things. Because again, the whole point of avoidance is getting clear on what it is and then figuring out how to troubleshoot it. It could be that you're avoiding something because there's something that violates your values there, whether it's a person, whether it's just certain activities, something about it doesn't feel right to you intuitively. So again, sitting with that and saying what's going on. For me, that comes up in a lot in the work I've done for myself on distortions. So I might be avoiding, here's a great example. I get very nervous, very anxious when I go and see one of my physicians, and there's nothing this physician has done to cause that. He's a wonderful doctor. He's very caring, very kind, listens to me. But there's a distortion that I have around physicians because I've had some not great experiences in the past. So I noticed myself avoiding calling to make an appointment to see this doctor, avoiding getting back on the messages that he sends me. So really understanding like what's underneath that. And there's this value of safety that I have. And for a long time, or with some of my doctors, I haven't felt safe. And so to me, that's the avoidance. Like, oh, that feels unsafe. I feel like I need to protect myself. So what you can see across all of these, it's just a lot about curiosity to say what's really going on here. And then there is a decision point. I'm not assuming that if you avoid, you need to do this thing. I don't have it with me, but you've probably seen some of my other videos. I always have it. I have my notebooks for everything. I try to write everything longhand, journalist, formal journalist, that's why. But what I have at the front of my work notebook, and I have a personal version too, is a big Post-it note. And I write down all the tasks or the things that I need to complete. And I'm assuming that we're not talking about basic task management. I use David Allen's Getting Things Done, some of his methodology, basically just writing down what's the next thing I need to do. So that's my list. And as I start to check things off the list, then there's not space to add more things to that Post-it. So I need to write a Post-it, which means I carry some items over. And if I've carried something over more than once, then I need to sit down and look at that item and say, what's going on here? Why am I avoiding it? Maybe I'm not clear on what I need to do. Maybe it's just not as big of a priority. Maybe somebody needs to get me something so that I can do that. There could be a whole host of reasons as I look at it with a critical eye. For me, it sounds so simple, just a to-do list. Wow, Sarah, that's amazing. But for me, what I realized is some of these things, I just didn't want to do them. Don't get me wrong. Part of having a job is doing some things you don't like to do. Tracking metrics for me. So there are certainly things I'm not saying if it's, buy food for your cat. Who's right here. You should buy food for your cat. It's important to, maintain your health. It's probably good to do what you need to do at work. That's very different than some of these specific things where you realize, why did I sign up for this? I have done a lot of avoidance behavior over the past few years around speaking engagements, panels, stuff like that, as well as external mentoring. It just, for whatever reason, takes a lot of activation energy for me. A long time ago, I realized conference speaking is not my thing. So I'm happy I'll do panels or I'll do roundtables or one-to-one connections. But I just realized I didn't have the energy there. And I asked myself, what am I doing this for? And the answer was because I think I should, not because I want to. There are so many ways that we can have a positive impact in the world. So as I was thinking about that, I thought, okay, well, this clearly isn't it. So there's this ultimate question after we've gotten curious. We're looking at what else are we committed to. We're looking at things like, how am I holding myself accountable? We're looking at things like our values and how things uphold our values. But then we come to a decision point, and it's a completely wonderful decision to say, maybe there's a reason I'm avoiding that, because it just doesn't work for me anymore. It's a behavior from the past. It's a relationship that I don't want to invest in right now. It is something that used to bring me joy, and now it feels like an obligation. Our time is so precious. It's the most precious thing that we have. We don't know how long we have on this earth. So to me, really and truly, avoidance is a powerful signal to say this is what's happening. And this is for somebody like me. Because of my anxiety and my conscientiousness and my belief that I'm trying to unwind that my worth comes from doing things, not being who I am. So this advice is coming from the place of a person who does a lot of things, and I need to do fewer things. That being said, you might also be doing too many things, or the things that you don't want to be doing. So the meta question we have to ask ourselves is there a reason that I'm avoiding this? So I know as I started this, it was about here are some tips on how not to avoid. At the end of the day, don't disregard your intuition. And this is again an opportunity to get curious and permission to say, I'm not going to do that thing. There's a reason I'm avoiding that thing. There's a reason I don't want to see that person. And to sit with that discomfort and to be able to articulate it. And then here's the tough part, to be okay with it, to say, okay, maybe I should do this particular thing, but it's just not a fit for me right now. I feel in the future, maybe we have to do a Q&A around boundaries and boundary setting, something that I am a student of at present. So good luck to y'all as you think about that activation energy when you get stuck, and give yourself permission and forgiveness if you realize that that item doesn't belong on your list anyway. All right, thanks y'all.